Professor?
Yes, Dr. Saab, we can see the slides now. You can start now.
Okay. So the title of my presentation is Support Vector Machine. Actually, during my PhD, I was working in fuzzy set theory as well as in decision making, aggregation operators, similarity measures, and different types of techniques to evaluate some decision problems. But when I came here, so my department is in information management. So they give me data mining and big data courses for teaching to bachelor, master, as well as PhD. So when I face some problems to managing different types of problems, so I saw support vector machine is also very famous for classification and regression. So today I choose support vector machine and I share my thoughts about support vector machine and their implementation. What kind of problem actually we deal with the help of support vector machine. So let's start from the definition of support vector machine. So first of all, support vector machine. So I have picture one. Actually, support vector machine is a technique or model or procedure to evaluate different types of problem. So we can see picture one. So this is picture one. You can see two different types of colors, blue and greens. And we have some lines in the form of dots with the side of blue dots and green sides, green dots. And similarly, we have also a line which is called boundary line. And we have also some positive hyperplane, which is near to green line dots. And similarly, we have a negative hyperplane, which is inside the origin. And those cluster which are touch the positive hyperplane as well as negative hyperplane is called support vectors. So I will briefly explain the definition, the structure, the mathematical formulation of support vector machine later, but this is the rough structure of support vector machine. And similarly, we have a distance between positive hyperplane and negative hyperplane is called margin. So support vector machine is actually a procedure which deal with different types of problem. But in a definition, support vector machine is a supervised. So we have a picture one. So what is the meaning of supervised? Actually, if we are thinking about supervised, so the word unsupervised is come in our mind. So if someone guide you, if someone support you, if someone brief you, it's called supervise. But if you learn from yourself, no one can guide you, no one can support you, it's like unsupervised. I have also included the proper definition of supervised and unsupervised in this lecture, but this is the graphical representation of the supervised and unsupervised. So support vector machine is a supervised machine learning algorithm used for classification and regression task, but it mostly commonly used for classification. So what is classification? We can see picture 3. So this is picture 3. We have 3 different types of clusters, green, blue, and red. And we are divided in 3 different categories with the help of lines, okay? Because these clusters in 2 dimensions, so we can easily separate with the help of lines. But sometimes we have some clusters in 3 dimensions, in 4 dimensions, so we will separate with the help of hyperplanes, okay? So what is classification? Classification is a type of problem in machine learning and statistics where the goal is predict a category or class label for given input. Okay, so actually in classification we categorize the data in different categories. Okay, so we will explain in next slides. Okay, for example, imagine you have email and you want to automatically sort them into spam or not spam. So we have two types of category. We have received email, maybe sometimes we have received email, sometimes we don't receive email because the email goes to spam. So we have two possibilities. Maybe we have in a spam, we don't have in a spam. That's binary classification task, only two classes. Binary classification, two possible outcome like spam and not spam. So we have two possibilities to class binary. If we have a three, so it is a ternary. If we have single, so it is like a linear classification. Sometimes we have also multi-classes classification. It's mean that if we have two possibilities, so we have this one, binary classification. If we have more than two types of classification, is called multi-classification. So what is multi-classification? More than two possible outcomes. Classifying animals, cat, dogs, and birds. So we have three different types of animals to divide in three different categories. So it is called multi-class classification. For example, we have four different types of fruits: grapes, bananas, apple, and orange. So we are divide these fruits in four different categories according to their names and structures. So it is also called multi-class classification. Similarly, we have the geometrical representation of binary classification as well as multi-class classification. So if we have two different types of clusters in the form of plus and in the form of triangles, and we have divided with the help of line into different classes, class 1 and class 2. It is called binary classification. And sometimes we have four different types of clusters to divide in four different categories according to their structures, their shapes. It's called multi-class classification. What is supervised and unsupervised? So from the figure of the geometrical representation of the supervised and unsupervised, it is clear what is supervised and what is unsupervised. But the proper definition of supervised, you train a model using label data. If some data with have a label is called supervised, okay, which mean each input has a known output. And similarly, you give the data model without label. For example, we have a picture. We have different types of animals, but we have also a labels. If we can see this types of picture, it's called go. And similarly, we have elephant and we have camel. So it's mean that we have a data with label. It's called supervised, okay? But if we have some data without label, it's called unsupervised. For example, this one. Input raw data. So we have three different types of animals without label. It is called unsupervised. We will interpret algorithm and processing. So in output, by using some algorithm, we can match the original picture with another picture to see this is animal, this is elephant, this is cow. For example, if you are teaching a model to recognize cat and dogs in picture, you give it thousands of label images saying this is cat or this is dog. For example, if we can take a picture of zebra, okay, and the picture is blurred, we cannot clearly understand it is zebra, it is donkey, it is a horse. So with the help of machine learning algorithm, we can classify this picture as zebra, this is donkey, or this is a horse according to their category. Similarly, we have supervised data, the different types of animals with labels, red, dog, and lion. We will classify in three different categories according to their structure. For example, if you feed the model a bunch of images without telling it what in them, it might group them into similar look categories. For example, zebra, donkey, and horse, because they are similar looking category. Maybe separating animal from object without knowing the name according to their color wise. So similarly, these fruit are also the same structure, but their name are different. But this is also unsupervised data because we don't have labels. Key concept of support vector machine. So actually the supervised, unsupervised, the classification and the regression, these all are the types of machine learning algorithm because machine learning algorithm is famous for classification or regression. So we explain what is machine learning algorithm, what is classification, what is supervised, what is unsupervised, okay? But this is the key concept of machine learning algorithm. Number first, we have hyperplane. So what is hyperplane? In support vector machine, a hyperplane is a decision boundary that separate different classes of data. For example, this one. So we have two different types of clusters, and these clusters we have divided with the help of line. This line is called hyperplane. Okay. What exactly is a hyperplane? In two-dimension spaces, the hyperplane will be line. And similarly, in three-dimension space, it become a plane. In higher dimension, it is very difficult to visualize. Okay. So in two-dimension, we can separate these cluster with the help of line. But in three-dimension or more than three-dimension, we can separate with the help of hyperplane. For example, this one. Similarly, we have also a hyperplane in two-dimension. We can separate two different types of clusters with the help of line. And similarly, we separate two different types of cluster with the help of plane. If you can open this link, you can easily see different types of two-dimension, three-dimension, four-dimension of shapes. Similarly, support vectors, okay? Actually, these all are the part of support vector machine, okay? So first we explain what is support vectors, what is hyperplane, what is decision boundary, what is positive hyperplane, what is negative hyperplane. So we explain one by one. So support vector. Support vectors are the data point that lie closest to the hyperplane, okay? For example, look here. So we have a decision boundary and we draw the positive hyperplane and negative hyperplane. So actually we draw two hyperplanes which touch the clusters, okay? So this is negative hyperplane which touch the cluster and this is positive hyperplane which touch the cluster, okay? So these are hyperplanes, okay? Positive hyperplanes and negative hyperplanes, and this one is a decision boundary. The cluster which touch the decision boundary or hyperplane is called support vector, okay? So this time we have one cluster touch the support vector, the hyperplane, and here also we have one cluster to touch the negative hyperplane. So we have two support vectors, but maybe sometime we have 4 support vector, we have 7 support vector, we have 8 support, sometimes we have no support vectors. So these points are critical because they define the position and orientation of the optimal hyperplane. Number 2 are the most difficult point to classify. Okay, so it is very difficult to find or classify these points to draw the positive hyperplane as well as negative hyperplane. For example, we have also we have a decision boundary. This is actually the structure of road, okay? So we have a decision boundary, we have a positive hyperplane, we have a negative hyperplane. So this negative cluster have touched the negative hyperplane, so it is called support vector. And similarly, we have two cluster which touch the hyperplane, is also called support vectors. In this case, we have also separating hyperplane, and the distance between positive hyperplane and negative hyperplane is called margin, okay? So if you have more margin, it's mean that you are safe. If you have a less margin, it's mean that you are in a danger zone. Margin. The margin is the distance between hyperplane, the decision boundary, and the closest point from each class. And those closest point is we talk about are the support vectors. For example, we have two types of clusters. red clusters and green clusters. Okay, we have a decision boundary, and similarly we draw the positive hyperplane and negative hyperplane. The distance between the cluster which touch the hyperplane and decision boundary is called margin, and similarly the distance between positive hyperplane and negative hyperplane is also called margin. So you can see if the point is so far from the decision boundary, it's mean that it is a good margin. But the point which are very close to the decision boundary, which is called bad margin. So if you are drive sometime, so you need to drive in a good margin with other cars, bicycles and bikes. But if you have in a bad margin, so maybe you can face some consequences, very serious consequences. Okay, margin, gap between decision boundary and hyperplane. So it is also called from this picture. It is clear we have two types of clusters, and we have a hyperplane, we have a decision boundary, we have a support vectors. So this is the geometrical representation of these three words. What is the main problem? Actually, sometimes we have some clusters which is very difficult to classify with the help of line, maybe with the help of hyperplanes. For example, we have a class A inside the circle. So we have three dots inside the circles. And similarly, we have a class B with white circles surrounding it. So these all are the class B. So we can't separate these class with the help of straight line or hyperplane in the original space. Because if we can draw the hyperplane like here, so we are not able to draw the hyperplane, the line. Similarly, if we can draw, so there are many problems to separate these two clusters into different categories. So what is the solution? The kernel track, instead of trying to separate the data in its original space, we map it to the higher dimension space where a linear separators does exist. Okay, so somewhat vector machine use a kernel function to do this mapping implicitly without ever computing the high dimensional coordinate directly. Okay, so in a linear algebra, sometimes we have a data in 3 dimensions. So for the to find the solution of the data, it is very difficult to find the solution of those data which is in a 4 dimension, 5 dimension, 6 dimension. So first we will reduce the dimension from 7 dimension to 2 dimension, from 8 dimension to 3 dimension to find the solution very easily. So similarly, we will find the solution of this problem to classify these data with the help of some function. Then we will categorize into different category. What is kernel function? So kernel function computes the dot product in some possible infinite feature spaces without actually mapping the data there. So we have different types of functions to use in a support vector machine to classify these data into different categories. So many people have used linear kernel. Many people have used polynomial kernel. Many people have used radial basis function or Gaussian kernel. And similarly, those people, they are working in AI or data science, so they have used the sigmod function or rectify unit linear vectors and such kind of functions. So by using radial basis function, we classify the data in 2 dimensions. So imagine this 2-dimension circular data. You can't separate linearly in 2 dimension in actually, but when you map to 3 dimension using a kernel, it might look like this. So after using support vector machine with the help of radial basis function, we classify the data into different categories. So after the evaluation of the data, we can easily classify into different categories with the help of lines. Okay. So similarly, we have a data. We have 2 different types of clusters, and it is very difficult to classify into different categories. So by using a kernel function, we can easily separate into different categories with the help of hyperplanes. We have also some examples. We have two different clusters, and it is very difficult to separate with the help of line. So we can classify with the help of function pi in two different classes and separate with the help of hyperplane. This is another example of the same problem. Okay, so we have a last word, silk variable. So what is silk variable? Silk variables in support vector machine. Silk variable usually denote as psi. Okay, are used in soft margin support vector machine to handle cases where the data is not linearly separable. Okay, so actually if the data is not separable into different classes, so the silk function in support vector machine can help us to classify the data into different category. They increase the margin between every points. They allow some data points to be inside the margin or even be misclassified while still trying to maintain a large margin between classes. In simple terms, silk variables are like forgiveness token for support vector machine. Number first, if a point lies perfectly on the correct side of the margin, so the silk psi I will be equal to 0. Okay. But if the point is within the margin, so the psi will be greater than 0. And similarly, if a point is on the wrong side, so the psi will be greater than 1. So we have three different types of conditions. If psi equal to 0, it's mean that points lie perfectly. If psi is greater than 0, it's mean that point lie within the margin. And if the psi is greater than 1, it's mean that we have misclassified some points. For example, we have, so if the points are classified accurately, so the psi will be 0. Okay. But if the points inside the hyperplane, it will be lie between 0 and 1, but not equal to 1 and not equal to 0. And similarly, we have the points cross the decision boundary. We have a red dots, we have a green dots. We draw the hyperplane between these 2 points, but these points located inside the another side of the decision boundary. This is a decision boundary. Okay, so if the points inside this side the hyperplane, it's okay. If the points located between the decision boundary, it's mean that they are lie between 0 and 1. But if the point is in another category, it will be greater than 0. It's mean that this point is misclassified points. So how we will deal with these points? With the help of support vector machine, we will increase the distance between these points to find the solution. This is the another example of the psi. So for these point, the value of psi equal to 0 because they are classified very accurately. If the point is inside the hyperplane, it's mean that the range of the points will be between 0 and 1. And if they are misclassified, so they should be cross the decision boundary. Objective. In support vector machine, the objective is to find the optimal hyperplane that maximizes the margin while ensuring correct classification of the data. In simple terms, it's about driving a line that best separates the classes while allowing for some flexibility if need. So the main goal of the support vector machine is follows. Maximize the margin between two classes to accurately separate two different classes into different category. And similarly, number second, minimize classification errors, especially without soft margin. This is done by solving the optimization problem that aim to find the best hyperplane. For example, so now we will explain with the help of example, so you will be understand much better as compared to explain a theory. Okay. So we have two different types of data. We have X1, which have 6 different clusters, and similarly we have X2, which have also six different clusters with two different classification. The one classification is represented by positive classification, and the another is represented by negative classification. Okay, so our task is to use support vector machine to classify this data set into two different classes. Okay, so we can draw easily. If you can draw the line of x-axis and y-axis, so the x1 value can draw with the help of on x-axis and similarly x2 on y-axis. So you can easily see that these data will be divided in two different classes. Okay. Plotting the data. To begin, visualize the data set in a two-dimensional spaces. The points with y positive, it means that a positive category. So 2, 3, 3, 3, and 3, 4. From here, 2, 3, 3, 3, and 3, 4 are lie in class 1, our first category. And similarly, we have 6, 5, 7, 7, and 8, 6 are lie. Similarly, 6, 5, 7, 7, and 8, 6 are the part of category 2. Now we will use support vector machine to find the hyperplane, or straight line that maximize the margin between two classes. Okay. So the equation of the decision boundary is Wx plus b equal to 0. Okay. From here, if you can remember, look here. W pi x plus b equal to 0 for those data for driving the decision boundary. Okay, but if W pi x plus b equal to -1, it's mean that we have a negative hyperplane, and if we have W pi x plus b, it's mean the positive hyperplane. So this is the equation of decision boundary, positive hyperplane, negative hyperplane. So we have a data, we divide in two different categories, then we draw the hyperplane, positive hyperplane, negative hyperplane. So look here, we have a data, we divide in two different categories. This is class 1, this is class 2. Then we find the decision boundary. After finding the decision boundary, we will find the positive hyperplane, negative hyperplane. Then we will find the support vectors and something on. So for simplicity, suppose the solution to the optimization problem gives us the following values. So we have randomly selected weight vectors is 1, -1. Okay. And similarly, a bias term b equal to 2, because W is a vector, X is the values from clusters, and B is a bias term. Okay. So classification of new data. Let's say we have a new data. Okay. So we have all data. We are classifying into different categories in class 1 and in class 2. And we also draw the decision boundary. Okay. Then someone told us we have a data x1, x2 equal to 4, 4. Can you describe the place of the data? They are located in a class 1 or in a class 2. They are in a bad margin, they are in a good margin. Can you describe the position of these points? So we will find the position of these points. To classify these points, this point, we substitute it into the decision information, f of x equal to wx plus b. But in actual, if we have a more than two dimension or 3 dimensions, so we apply a summation I from 1 up to n wi xi plus b. But we have two data, so we have w1 x1 plus w2 x2 plus b. So this is the value of w1 and this is the value of x1. And similarly, we have w2 is -1, this is -1. And we have x2 plus b. So the value is 2. It's mean that f of x is greater than 0. The new point is classified in plus. It's mean that 4, 4 is the part of class 1, which is lie in outside of the class 1, like positive hyperplane. Final thoughts. Support vector machine remain one of the top algorithm for many classification tasks, thanks to its focus on the maximizing the margin and its flexibility in dealing with nonlinear separations. With the kernel track, it is capable of handling high complex and high dimensional data set, making it versatile choice for a wide range of application in the field like image recognition, bioinformatics, and text classification. Support vector machine regression, logistic regression, and we have decision tree. These all are used for the classification of the data. Okay, so sometime many people have used decision tree, many people have used logistic regression, many people have used regression, many people have used support vector machine. But in the future, if anyone can provide opportunity, so I will explain the another algorithm. So if someone working in management sciences as well as fuzzy algebra as well as in AI, so if they read a research paper especially published in 2025 and the data is they are simplified with the help of support vector machine, so they have opportunity to read the paper and apply a new algorithm like logistic regression, decision tree to solve the same problem and also compare with the existing result. So this is the presentation, and if you have any questions, so I'm here. And okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for the informative talk and for your time. Now, I would like to ask the audience if they have any question related to this talk. You may raise your hand and we can allow you to ask questions. I know some certain students who are interested in classification problems. So I'm expecting some questions from their side, and now we have two students who are asking for questions. So first, I will take question from Hamza Mubashir.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.
My question is, can we combine the idea of fuzzy set and machine learning algorithm like SVM, as you have background of fuzzy set theory?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Actually, I have supervised 3 students in Taiwan, and I also supervise 1 student in Riphah International University, Islamabad. So when I came here, so the faculty member from Taiwan, they are very expert in AI and data science, but they are very weak in mathematics. So 2 professors approached me and they told me we need to work together. So I work with him, and we have write many papers, and they are under review in Applied Soft Computing, EAA, and different journals. We have resolved different problems like classification, regressions, but when we visit to any government or private organization for arranging a practical data, so they are not giving us for the evaluation because of privacy, because of copyright and something more. But we have choose some hypothetical data, and we have evaluate with the help of support vector machine. So it is possible many people have work on it, and if you are interested, you can send me email. I will give you a time. We will discuss by Zoom, and hopefully after discussion, you will see a fruitful result. Thank you very much, Hamza.
Dr. Saab, from your answer, I am guessing that you are saying yes. You
Yeah.
can implement
Yeah.
fuzzy rules in and support vector machine together. We can use for classification.
I think according to my knowledge, support vector machine with fuzzy support vector machine is also introduced intuitionistic for Pythagorean, for bipolar. Yeah, many people have work on it. If you can see, many people are available on support vector machine.
Okay, now I will take another question from Sehrish.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
First of all, I will ask the question. When you explain the formula f of x is equal to wx plus b, which is about the decision line, and we just take only 2 number points x1 and x2, and then we decide if f of x is greater than 0, then it's goes to the category in +1. So it does not affect if we have a lot of data points.
Okay, it's a very good question. Actually, for us, it is very easy. If we are consider 2-dimension data, 3-dimension data, 4-dimension data, we can easily evaluate with the help of f of x. But if we have a data with 70 features, with 80 features, with 100 features, mostly peoples, they are working in computer science, AI, data science. So they take 20 features, 25 features, and then they run a program with the help of MATLAB, with the help of Java, with the help of Python. So for those people, it is very difficult to run before running to develop a program. Then they run and then they then they get a result. So for those people, it is very difficult. But for us, yes, it is possible. If we have a data with 10 features, if we have a data with 20 features, it is very easy for us to classify. But if we visualize in 3-dimension or in 7-dimension, in a 10-dimension, in a 20-dimension, so it is very difficult. How we can teach to other this data, this is a 7-dimension data, and this is the final result. So if someone told you how we visualize in general life, so it is very difficult, but it is possible. Yes, it is possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my mic was off when I was talking, you know. We have another question, that's from Aisha. So
Okay.
Aisha, please raise your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Let me interrupt you again, Aisha and any other student. Whenever you ask a question, first you introduce yourself to the speaker and then you can ask a question.
Sir, I am PhD student under the supervision Dr. Asfar at BG Multan.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question. In SVM, we use numerical data. If we have graph theory background, we have structure of chemical that belong to different categories. Then how we apply SVM on this structure?
Okay. Actually, support vector machine is developed for classical data. Okay. Initially, if you can study the structure of support vector machine, so it is famous for evaluation of classical data. Okay. Then after the development of the support vector machine for classical data, many people have visualized for fuzzy set, intuitionistic fuzzy set, and many papers are proposed based on fuzzy graph, intuitionistic graph. Okay, so it is not based on the data. Okay, if you have a 2-dimension data, 4-dimension data, but if the data is for graph theory, it is possible, no problem. Okay, and many papers are developed by different scholars. So if you can see on a Google Scholar, so you will be see many papers. It is very easy, no problem. Okay.
Is there any other question, Aisha? If you have any other question, or should we proceed further?
Sir, it means that first we have numerical value of structure, then we apply SVM on this.
Yes. As actually, support vector machine is famous for classification. For example, Professor, can I speak in Urdu little bit?
Yes, that's how you can speak in it.
ये जब हमारे पास कुछ डेटा होता है वो क्लासिफिकेशन के लिए यूज होता है। क्लासिफिकेशन कैसे? जैसे कि हमारे पास ये बहुत बड़े शॉपिंग मॉल्स होते हैं, जैसे कि इंपोरियम हो गया, सफा गुड़ मॉल हो गया, गेगा मॉल हो गया, सनटोरस हो गया। वहां पर किसी बड़े शॉप में हम शॉपिंग के लिए जाते हैं और वहां पर क्या होता है, हम बटर लेते हैं और ब्रेड लेते हैं। तो मोस्टली लोग जब ब्रेड लेते हैं तो उसके साथ वो बटर भी लेते हैं। ये एक दूसरे के साथ क्या है, रिलेटेड है। तो अब अगर एक शॉपिंग मॉल में, एक स्टोर में एक कॉर्नर में बटर रखा जाए और दूसरे अपोजिट कॉर्नर में ब्रेड रखा जाए, तो ये कस्टमर के लिए फिर बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है कि वो जाके पहले एक कॉर्नर पे जाए फिर दूसरे कॉर्नर पे जाए उसको ढूंढे। तो वो दोनों अगर एक साथ मिल जाए तो कस्टमर के लिए आसानी हो। तो इसी तरह अगर हम ब्रेड के साथ जूतों को रखें, तो वो एक दूसरे, कोई बंदा ऐसा नहीं है कि वो शॉप जाएगा, वो वहां से ब्रेड लेगा, वो बटर लेगा और उसके साथ वो जूते लेगा, तो वो उस क्लास में आता ही नहीं है। इसी वजह से इसको क्लासिफाई करने के लिए हमने इन सब डेटा को डिफरेंट क्लासेस में डिवाइड करना है। जैसे कि बटर हो गया, ब्रेड हो गया, एग्स हो गई, ये सारी चीजें हमने एक क्लास पे रखनी है, एक साइड पे रखनी है। फिर ये जूते वगैरह दूसरी क्लास में रखनी है, कपड़े तीसरे क्लास में। तो आप किसी भी शॉपिंग मॉल में चले जाओ तो वहां पर जहां पर आपको खाने की अशिया मिलेगी वहां पर आपको ये दूसरी चीजें नहीं मिलेगी, जूते वगैरह वो आपको दूसरे कॉर्नर पे, बैग्स वगैरह अलग तरफ आपको मिलेंगे। आपको घर की सफाई के लिए जो चीजें मिलती है वो आपको अलग क्लास से मिलेगी। तो इन चीजों को इक्यूरेटली क्लासिफाई करने के लिए हम सपोर्ट वेक्टर मशीन यूज करते हैं। अब आप करते हैं ग्राफ थ्योरी में डेटा, तो आपके पास डेटा ग्राफ में हो, आपके पास फजी में हो, आपके पास क्रिस्प में हो, किसी भी टाइप्स ऑफ डेटा हो, इजीली आप उसको सिंप्लीफाई कर सकते हैं विद द हेल्प ऑफ सपोर्ट वेक्टर मशीन। सपोर्ट वेक्टर मशीन फजी के लिए भी डेवलप किया है और बहुत से लोगों ने इस पे काम किया है, फजी ग्राफ के लिए भी किया है और बहुत लोगों ने काम किया है। हमारे मैथमेटिक्स वालों का मसला नहीं है, हमारे मैथमेटिक्स वालों का ये तो स्ट्रक्चरली मैथमेटिक्स वालों के लिए है। मसला उन लोगों के लिए है जो स्पेशली कंप्यूटर पे काम करते हैं या मैनेजमेंट में काम करते हैं। अब कंप्यूटर वाले लोग क्या करते हैं, उनके पास डेटा की फीचर्स होते हैं, किसी के पास 20 फीचर्स होते हैं डेटा के, किसी के 30 फीचर्स होते हैं। फिर उन 20-30 फीचर को हैंडल करना बहुत मुश्किल होता है कंप्यूटर साइंटिस्ट के लिए, क्योंकि उन्होंने उसके लिए एल्गोरिथम बनाना होता है। फिर वो एल्गोरिथम रन करते वक्त बहुत टाइम लेता है, क्योंकि वो डायमेंशन 3 डायमेंशन से ऊपर बढ़ जाता है तो वो तो कंप्यूटर हैंग हो जाता है। फिर तो वो 2-2 3-3 4-4 दिन लेते हैं, बाज दफा 15 दिन लेते हैं। और ये प्रॉब्लम वो लोग अंडरस्टैंड कर सकते हैं जो कि फ्लूइड वाले हैं, क्योंकि वहां पर वो जो नॉन न्यूटेनियन या डायनामिकल सिस्टम में काम करते हैं तो वहां पर ये सेम प्रॉब्लम होता है कि वो क्या होता है, वो जो डायमेंशन उसका फ्लूइड का होता है वो 3 डायमेंशन तक तो वो ठीक है, वो बंदे को समझा सकते हैं। जब उससे ऊपर जाते हैं तो उसकी विजुअलाइजेशन बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है। तो हमारे मैथमेटिक्स वालों के लिए मसला नहीं है, ये मसला कंप्यूटर साइंटिस्ट के लिए जिनकी फीचर ज्यादा होती है तो वो विजुअलाइजेशन में मसला होते हैं। और वो लोग जो कि मैनेजमेंट साइंसेज में पीएचडी कर रहे हैं, चाहे वो फाइनेंशियली मैनेजमेंट है, चाहे वो इंफॉर्मेशन मैनेजमेंट है, तो या आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस में मैनेजमेंट है, वो लोग मैनेजमेंट की चीजों में बहुत एक्सपर्ट होते हैं। मगर ये सपोर्ट वेक्टर मशीन या डिसीजन ट्रीज या लॉजिस्टिक रिग्रेशन या सिंपल रिग्रेशन या स्मूथी मॉडल, इनकी यूटिलाइजेशन में फिर वो बहुत सफर करते हैं। तो ये स्पेशली उन लोगों के लिए है। तो आप लोगों का ये प्रॉब्लम ये इजीली हल कर सकता है, ये कुछ भी नहीं है। एनी क्वेश्चन?
Okay, sir. No, thank you.
थैंक यू।
Thank you everyone for the questions that you have raised. Thank you, Dr. Saab, for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear sir, for your invitation, and thank you very much, Professor Dr. Kamran Jamil. And I'm very thankful to Professor Dr. Kifayat. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, everyone. This was Dr. Zishan Ali from National Union University, Taiwan. Our next speaker, Professor Dr. Ivarak, she is not present with us. She just excused.
अल्लाह, ये तो बहुत जोर लगाता है।
Okay, everyone, sorry for the interruption. The next speaker that we had, Professor Dr. Ivarak from Poland. She just emailed us that she will not be available. She might be available at a later point, but I think by that time our day will be finished. So she won't be here with us right now. And with this talk, we are going to end our session. But before